Back to school tonight.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
Boy, it's been a hot week. You know, I'm sneaking a peek because Erika said to me, "Boy, you look sweaty." I am sweaty. In fact, I might steal. Hold on a second. This is in. It's been a hot week. Do you guys ever get a workout in and then you think you're all good and then you get your second sweat? At least I'm trying, right? This new wide angle, by the way, has got me thinking I gotta lose 5 or 10 pounds. Anyway, listen, on Fridays, we like to spread it out a little bit, talk about things that need in-depth conversation. Erika Sanzi, Good School Hunting is her blog. She's my go-to education guru. And by the way, every education official that I have in here, I always say, do you read Erika Sanzi's? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So she's developing a conscience, and I think a practical outlook. She and I don't agree on everything, I will tell you that, but I will tell you that she's really developed a real conscience amongst education officials in this state from a teacher, former elected official, and parent perspective. Although she doesn't know the camera angles either yet. Slide. There you go. We're all learning this week. Here's the latest news on second language learning in the state.
A year-and-a-half-long probe by the Department of Justice finds Providence isn't doing enough for a major portion of its student body, children learning English as a second language. Among the probe's findings, that Providence placed hundreds of English learners in schools that lacked services they needed, operated an educationally unsound program for some English learners, and lacked sufficient materials to implement English learner programs.
But what they're basically saying is, yeah, you did a lot, but it's not enough. And it's tough to disagree with that.
Providence School Superintendent Chris Marr points to a lack of ESL certified teachers coming through the pipeline and a lack of funding.
The key for us is we need to look at the funding formula in this state, and we need to include English language learners in the same way that children in poverty and children with disabilities are looked at.
Providence and the DOJ reached an agreement this week in which Providence will revise the way it identifies and places English learning students while providing more ESL courses.
And we are going to take the steps to address it. I think that's my message to parents and students. We are going to significantly change the way that we operate in order to meet the needs of these kids.
Well, what's your welcome? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
What's your overall take on this? Just the whole second language pressure that seems to be putting on it. The reason I ask the question on an overall basis is, let me throw something at you. I find it interesting that this particular administration seems to be pushing the envelope so hard on things, immigration, illegal immigration, and the like, to the point where they'd like to drive out a lot of the students in the urban centers simply because they want to drive out the population. Yet the pressure from the federal government seems to be part of an ongoing saga for metrics that have to be met. And so this particular, federal financial hammer that's been put on the city of Providence seems to be part of a continuum, whereas the Trump administration seems to be arguing different things. Do you find the water running through the pipe in two different directions the way I do?
I mean, I do, but what Trump says on this issue, it's like so.
He doesn't say much on the.
But he doesn't there's no way that he has a working knowledge of the realities that school systems are dealing with, whether in urban schools feel it the most, urban ring a little bit, but even some suburban schools feel it. Chris Marr is on record. I don't know if you remember when they did the Race in Rhode Island series of the Providence Journal, and they sat down for hour-long interviews with leaders. He was talking about these problems in 2015. He called it a tidal wave. I think his exact quote was, "A tidal wave is coming, and we are looking in the other direction." So I don't think he's surprised by any of this. I'm not surprised by any of it. Massachusetts had a similar thing happen to them about 8 years ago. They're going into cities and states. They are invariably finding that the needs aren't being met because the needs are so great, the resources in many cases aren't there. For example, in Rhode Island, our funding formula, and there's a lot of good things to say about our funding formula, but it does not single out English language learners at all. It thinks that it uses poverty as a proxy, kind of, I think, and thinks that maybe it'll capture those students, but there's overlap, but they're not the same thing. And we don't have teachers to fill these positions. So this is
We
not.
don't have teachers to fill a lot of positions. I mean, the commissioners came out in the last week, talking about how it's time to be out of state shopping for teachers because we don't have the expertise in math and science and all that kind of thing, right?
I think the number is that in the past 5 years, we've seen a 50% decline in the state of Rhode Island in enrollment in teacher prep programs. Like, I think we have the steepest decline or second steepest decline in New England. So we don't have, it's sort of like you need to have teachers who have the ESL certification or the ESL endorsement. Well, okay, but I don't have like magic fairy dust where I can just make these teachers appear. So what's going to happen, I think, is a lot of current educators are going to have to get that ESL endorsement and that certification. Hopefully they can find ways to do that where it's not.
How long does it take to get that?
I do not know. I know that when Providence sort of saw the writing on the wall that there just wasn't a marketplace of teachers and they needed to fulfill this, they joined up with Roger Williams and they began training doing like their own program in ESL. It's not enough teachers, and I don't know anything about the timeline, but it better not take too long because this is an urgent need. Providence is one of few cities too that's not seeing declining enrollments. But they are seeing the enrollment increasing. It is increasing with many, many immigrant families, so this need is going to just continue to rise.
The Latino student population is the majority population.
Yeah, I want to say it's like about 75%, but don't quote me on that.
It's close to 70. So I mean, it's something that I think for people who aren't paying attention, it's a shocking number.
And the white student population, I believe, is under 10%.
It's close to that, yeah. So you've got a really interesting thing that's developed over the course of time, and all of us, if we're thinking through things, evolve on issues. I can hear myself on the radio, and perhaps even as late as this show, whose anniversary, or which anniversary starts, I think right after Labor Day. It'll be 5 years here on the TV. Perhaps I was saying it as little as 5 years ago, that I want to see English immersion, that I want us to just completely postpone every other subject matter and get these kids up and running in English no matter where they enter the system, because it seems to me if they don't have a command of the language, they're not going to succeed. I haven't given up on that, but I've taken a breath over it because the numbers seem to be so incredible. I don't know what kind of education would be going on other than just teaching English. What's the practical solution? First of all, do you agree with me that immersion is that something talked about and not really understood?
I think that when people talk about best practices, and the truth is I am not an expert in this area, but I know that dual language is considered a best practice when teaching students for whom English is a second language. So my suspicion is that you are not right, but I think that it's.
Well, you don't have to mince words. I mean,
I don't have a ton of because I don't have a ton of experience with this, so I'm not going to say. But I just think that that's not going to happen. I don't think that it's considered a best practice. I can't tell you why that is, but do you know how many languages are spoken in the Providence Public Schools? I was floored.
Dozens.
54. So imagine now that you're being told, well, you don't have your materials translated for the parents. People think they mean into Spanish. Schools I've been dealing with generally or worked in have generally only translated into Spanish. But if you have an expectation that you're translating into all the different language, I mean, this is a heavy, heavy lift, and it's not free. I mean, this is going to cost resources that we don't see or haven't seen.
Well, it's a hard political problem because the politics of diversity are vicious right now.
Massachusetts requires every single teacher and administrator now to have an ESL endorsement. So they have to have passed certain benchmarks to show that they are capable of teaching and educating this population. Rhode Island doesn't have that, but I suspect we will soon.
All right. More when we come back. You have trouble figuring that out?
Well, no, I understand that, but all I'm saying is that
I just got an admission during the break that my education czar here has a fractions problem. You want to talk to me about it?
It's very out of vogue now to say I'm not a math person, or they don't want women saying I'm bad at math. So I don't feel like I should say that because of the peer pressure.
Oh, okay.
But when I was listening to the commissioner talk about people struggling with the concept of proportionality, I felt empathy. Let's put it that way. And my own children,
right. The commissioner was here the other day, talking to us about the challenge with math teaching in general, and that he's very concerned about it, and he's got a whole new program for teacher development that doesn't mirror what he has right now, and he needs approval and all that kind of thing. But he was very, very, I think, transparent about the idea that we got teachers who couldn't pass the test themselves teaching kids. That is muddy water. I mean, that's crazy. That's nuts.
It was the first time, for viewers who don't know this, every 2 years, students take samples of students take the same test in every state, and Rhode Island just fared miserably in mathematics again. So the 4th graders are 44th in the country, and the 8th graders are 46th in the country. I mean, it is bad. But this was the first time that I ever heard anyone, particularly a commissioner of education, state it so simply. He thinks that all of our math woes generally can be traced back to a problem with fractions. He said we have a problem with fractions.
Right.
And it's funny because
he suggested that people think that the quarter pounder is actually a larger sandwich than the 1/3 pound cheeseburger because the 4 is larger. I think that's funny because the 4 is larger than the 3.
Well, okay, but okay.
You know the difference.
I
see your pizza.
I know the difference, but I know the difference.
One slice out of 8. That's an old-fashioned New York, New Jersey pizza you're talking about there. Too many people around here in New England cut it in squares, which is really stupid. Just saying.
Sometimes I really like the graphics I find to put with my pieces, and I actually my pieces, and I really did like this one with the pizza.
Yeah,
I must say.
I know.
So so I really appreciated him saying that. I actually immediately went to look at the studies he referred to, and they're there. And when I reached out to some different math folks who I know, actually some in the U.S. and actually one guy in Canada, they were like, "Yep." So this seems like a commonly held belief among educators and among math folks.
How are we going to fix this one?
I mean, this is tricky. It's a little bit like when I don't know if it's ever happened to you with your daughter, but papers come home in the folder, and they're just written so poor. So like you assume that, like, let's say an ELA teacher, an English language arts teacher, or an English teacher, writes well, and so all of a sudden alarm bells go off when occasionally your kid gets one that doesn't, and then you think, wait, how come if she doesn't know how to use apostrophes properly, how's she going to teach students to use them properly? And I think that's what we're dealing with in math right now. My sense is that the teachers weren't taught this well, and then there was no bar they had to clear to become school teachers, and now we have a problem.
And throw in, what is it now? 15 years ago, that investigations math mindset, which is that it really was the theory.
I knew you were going to bring this up.
And the concept, I hate it.
I know. First time I ever learned of you.
I have a daughter in grad school who still has got to take extra time to work through whatever math equations are necessary for her grad work. And it pains me that I didn't just stand on my head and scream at the public school system that I didn't take her out then and get her a different education, because it was just awful. I mean, I think it was child abuse for at least 3 or 4 years.
But let's pause. So you could have, if you could rewind, you take her out and you put her somewhere else.
Well, I would have sent her to a
because you have the
tutor.
means, right? But now let's think of the majority of students who don't understand proportionality, may have a teacher who doesn't understand it, and there are no means for them to go anywhere else. So it's the thing is, there's also so many educators that are so excellent at teaching math that I hope that perhaps one of the strategies will be to find a way to use those teachers who excel at this and maybe see if they can help do some training and some coaching.
It seems like we need some storm, I mean, the wrong term, but it seems like we need a special force of math teachers to be training rapid fire everybody else.
I think we do, because our kids are going to need these skills. This is not a joke. This is serious.
No. So there's two issues on the table. English as a second language, which really means English as a first language eventually, right? You would hope.
Well, I mean, not necessarily, because, you know, imagine that they may still speak Spanish at home and with their family members, but they'll be able to speak English
which is
at a very high level.
Which is a cultural conversation I still think is important to have. I really do. You know, competition is going to require, I mean, if you're going to compete well, it's going to require you speaking English well. But we got a fractions problem, we got an English speaking problem, and then we've got, well, wait till you hear this point of view that Erika has and has written about when we come back. Stay with us.
I mean,
all right, now this one I wanted to applaud for days on end. This actually was not just, and I'm not minimizing your blog, which is highly read, but this got the Providence Journal run here. No, the kids aren't amazing. I just really appreciated this perspective. It's an old school thought, is it not?
well, I will say that I got very positive reaction from some folks that are one generation sort of above, or you know, some grandparents definitely weighed in and were like, finally, thank you. But I'll also say that my own peers, in many cases, really enjoyed the piece, which I don't know if our viewers even know what it's about.
Let's set the premise.
So essentially, the piece is about how we overpraise our kids, and we talk about sort of things that we just expect them to do, like finish 5th grade and finish 8th grade, and then we all of a sudden turn that into some sort of
accomplishment,
amazing achievement that we're gonna, you know, blather on social media about how we're so proud.
You're right. Did I tell my 13-year-old he's amazing because he's finishing 7th grade today? Heck no. I told him that despite his many buddies who are skipping the last day of school with parental permission, he's going to fulfill his obligations as a student and be there to the end. I told him I'm proud of the way he worked to improve his grades the final semester. I told him I love him as I do every morning, but I also told him there's nothing amazing about making it to 8th grade, and that it would actually be pretty amazing if he hadn't. Everything's in place for him to succeed. He needs to understand that for many boys his age here in our little state of Rhode Island, across this country, that is simply not the case. He doesn't experience violence, hunger at all,
He was born on 3rd base, and he needs to know that. And so I didn't mean to imply, there were some people that took issue, I think because they saw the headline and didn't read the full piece, but who thought that that for some children, these are huge accomplishments and victories, which I agree with. And I say that in the piece. I mean, if you have been living with violence, trauma, hunger, homelessness, yeah, that's a really big deal. But the people that are going on and on about it the most, that's not the category. And I take it back too. You could have there could be a mental illness situation, you know, in a family who otherwise is privileged, and again, getting through the year could be a huge deal. But I'm speaking. I'm speaking generally that we overdo it.
Of course, there are individual cases where these accomplishments that may seem routine are phenomenal. I think common sense dictates that. But overall, what you're saying is that you know, we've gotten a little crazy here, and we have gotten a little crazy. I mean, we've gotten crazy. You know, we take limos to father-daughter dances. We celebrate kindergarten graduations. You know, now listen, I got a cap and gown in 8th grade because I graduated from a parochial school, which was kind of a cultural thing that used to happen in the day. And you know, it was a family party. It was fast. It wasn't. Everyone understood what it really wasn't or what it was. But they leave 5th grade to go to a different building. We have a graduation for them. We have a ceremony.
And social media exacerbates this.
Right?
I think a stepping
More
up
photos
ceremony.
on Facebook
I mean,
about what my kid is doing. I mean, if I see another one, even from my own family, I'm going to just choke.
Well, you can unfollow them if you want to. I can teach you how to do that.
You could? Well, I don't. You know what? To be honest with you, I haven't looked at my personal Facebook page in 7 years, so I probably should delete it.
My husband has you beat. He's never logged into his.
Yeah, okay. You know, but my wife and daughter show me blah, 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 da, da, da. And it's like, listen, I understand the concept of sharing events. But it gets, the whole thing is nuts. The whole thing is crazy. And getting it back to your concept, which is what? We need to set higher bars for applause, right?
Well, I think, first of all, I think that, you know, that kids who have it easier than other kids across the world and the country and the state and their own community, I just think it's important that they know that. So it's not that it's not that I'm not proud of you, but it would be pretty remarkable if, with all of these safety nets in place and all of this support, if, you know, you didn't sort of check off these milestones. And that goes for a high school graduation too, in the case of my own kids. So, you know, I just thought it was overdone, and I think that I must have written this right at the end of the school year because I must have been seeing, you know, it was the I'm so proud. I'm thinking, well, is your kid like off building houses for Habitat for Humanity? Like, I just don't feel that way. When my kids finish the school year, that's probably not the thing I'm most proud of that they've done all year.
I don't know. What is it about us? I wouldn't ask you your age. You're younger than I am. But what is it about, you're kind of not my generation. Oh, you're.
I'm 45.
I got it. That was easy. I got, yeah, that was, well, I got a bunch of personal questions I could get out pretty easily. Well, you're 12 years old, so you'd be, you know, you're like my younger sister. I don't know what happened to us. We didn't grow up this way. We did not grow up this way. We did not. What's the matter with us? What were we missing? Why are we trying to celebrate everything so much so soon?
That I don't know. I do not know whether that's coming from parent pressure on schools. I don't know if schools are driving it. I don't know if, I mean, you know, we could obviously argue about participation trophies and you know, which all kids, by the way, know the difference and talk about the difference. And sometimes when they get their participation trophy, they walk off the field and they throw it in the garbage can on the way out, because it doesn't mean anything to them. On the other hand, there are kids for whom, like, that may be the only trophy they're going to get, and it's a big deal. So at the younger ages, you and I might disagree on that, but it's the same conversation. Where did it come from?
Well, if you're going to write these pieces, you better come up with the answer.
My sense is it came from this self-esteem movement that, I don't remember when that became a big thing, but it became a big thing, and I think that we took something that is important and sort of went a little crazy with it.
And so we only have 30 seconds here, but is that impacting our demands on education as well?
What do you mean?
In terms of, you know, requiring kids to work harder? Or are we just nurturing them so much that we don't?
We're not pushing them hard enough in school, I would argue, in most cases, and we're not holding them to the expectations that they can meet. We're holding students of color and low-income kids to even lower expectations, and we're inflating their grades.
Well, that's a subject for another day. You bullish on the school year? A couple seconds. You excited about the school year?
I work from home and have 3 boys, so yes, I'm very, very excited about the start of the school year.
We're up next. That's great. All right, welcome back. Tomorrow night, actually it's Friday night, sorry, for the weekend, enjoy it. On Monday, we'll revisit a conversation we had with Steve Gordon, Cumberland wrestling coach legend. And on Tuesday, Ellen Rosenberg, the executive editor of the Journal, will pop in here for a conversation about the media. Thanks for watching.